Hey everybody, welcome back to Experience Points, a less formal, more laid back sort of video series where I talk about games that I've played a bit of, but haven't yet finished. And today, we're taking a look at Octopath Traveler 2, and I'm here to tell you guys that Octopath Traveler is back. Oh my gosh. So after the Nintendo Direct where they announced that the demo was now available, I knew that I had to dive into it right after I dove into Sea of Stars, of course, which I have a video talking about right now. A solid game so far, the solid demo. And Octopath Traveler 2, another really solid demo. If you have the opportunity to play it, make sure you do. I couldn't find it on the Nintendo Switch eShop for whatever reason, so I went ahead and played it on PC. And I've got a bit of a potato PC here. It's got a AM3 processor, one of the old bulldozers, and a RX 480. It's a pretty old AMD card, but it's definitely got the job done, and I was able to set it up to run in 1080p, solid 60 frames per second. I just wish I could see how it ran on Nintendo Switch, but historically, Octopath kind of started with the Switch, so I'm sure it's going to run just fine there too. The first three characters that I really spent a good amount of time with in their stories, and I will say, as far as this demo goes, not all characters seem to be equal. I definitely started off with who I think had the strongest prologue so far, and this is a prologue demo, by the way, which means essentially you can play the beginning of the game. For any of the 8 characters that are available at the start of the game, you can play any of them up for about 3 hours into the story. Not all of them necessarily have multiple chapters available, and I believe that Osvald, the guy that I started off with in this game, who's a super cool character, I think he actually had 2 chapters fully playable before the demo would basically wrap up, which is really important because basically some of these characters only have the first chapter available. The other 2 that I played only had the first chapter, that being Throné and Agnea. Now, they only had the first chapter available, which is kind of like barely an introduction to the characters themselves before it just says, okay, go play as this character for a while. Whereas Osvald actually had a bit of a story that you could actually get really sucked into. I don't think anybody else really had that same hook, at least not so far, but I'm guessing that for those other characters, it's probably really going to happen in Chapter 2, which is kind of when Osvald's chapter really started picking up. And that's kind of unique, and I knew I had to play as Osvald because a lot of you already know that I am just an absolute fan of jailbreak sequences, and okay, I'm going to give some mild spoilers for what's in the demo, but it's all stuff that happens within the first hour of the game, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. He is this guy that was basically falsely accused of murdering his wife and child and was sent off to this really crazy island called Frigid Island. It's this big prison, kind of like Alcatraz. It's famed, everybody's treated really poorly, and most people die before their sentences are actually served. So this whole thing is about him trying to get out, and he's a scholar who's a super cool magic dude. And I gotta say, as soon as his chapter started, I had chills immediately, not just because of the Frigid Isles setting, but the voice acting behind him just was super strong and really, it just got me really quick. And I knew immediately that Octopath Traveler 2 has brought back Octopath Traveler. If you're a big fan of Octopath Traveler, and I almost forgot how much I loved Octopath Traveler until I replayed this, it's there. It is so good so far. His whole backstory is kind of drip fed to you throughout the escape sequence as you try to gather up the supplies that you'll need to escape the island, a companion to help you on your way off of the island to break out of jail. Looking for certain plans to find your way, how to tunnel out of the prison. It's super cool, and jailbreak tropes are one of my favorites in JRPGs, and this one was actually very well executed. And it's not just, the gung-ho, all right, let's run out of jail. It's like actual escape scheme that you try to follow out and plan along, and it features this really smart guy who used to be a scholar of magic, who is searching for the one true magic, or a way to achieve the one true magic. His story is just drip-fed to you throughout, and it is really engrossing. After I finally finished up his section, though, I went ahead and moved on to Throné, because Throné is, I really liked Therion, edgelord that he was. Throné is a different beast, and she is in this sort of thieves guild thing. She's not just like a aspiring thief. She's been in this thieves guild slash assassins guild sort of deal, and it starts off like a mission gone wrong, and they think that there might be a traitor among them. And well, I don't want to spoil it any more than that, but it was just this really interesting thing that talks about like how they all kind of were raised to be these thieves and assassin type characters that they are. There's one character in particular who was in this set of 3 characters that her story kind of followed, named Scarachi, and I wanted to mention him specifically because I thought it was really clever what they did with this character. When you're battling alongside them, the person Scarachi seems like a real douchebag, and I will say that you can tell he's a douchebag not just through his interactions with the characters, but because of the abilities that they gave him, which were all essentially informing his douchiness. He would use an ability that would decrease everybody's defense but his own, because he would basically chastise everybody or talk down to them. And you can tell that this character was crafted from the ground up to be hated, and they did a great job. Agnea, the dancer of this game, she was wonderful. It goes straight for the feels, I'll say. I think that that's one of the strengths of all of these little encapsulated stories, is that they all have this really concentrated start that was really fun. Because I restarted and chose a different person for this demo each time, because there's a 3-hour time limit otherwise. And so once the time limit's up, you can start a new file and you can check out the other people. And these are the main 3 that I focused on. Agnea's about a dancer who's like trying to follow in her mother's footsteps, and it's such an uplifting and heartfelt sort of section of the game, and it contrasts so well against Throné, which is like really dark and gritty, and well, the other dark and gritty story of Osvald, who's doing the prison break after being accused of murdering his family. Like, there's a wide breadth here. I was kind of curious though, and I think a lot of people were really curious about how Octopath Traveler 2 would handle when they said that they were going to try to make this game fix the issue that a lot of people had with Octopath Traveler 1, which is that your companions didn't really interact at all. I'm not really sure how that's going to play out yet, because, like I said, only like the first chapter is available for some people, and chapter 2 is available for others. And you can, at this point, you can bump into your other companions and you can join up. And they did handle this in quite a different way. Instead of having it just see like, oh, you wander in and you see this person and you push the button. Do you want to see them? And they join you. It's not quite like that, although it's not too far removed from that. So I think that if you weren't super happy with the way that it worked before, they've taken steps to sort of introduce themselves to you. The character will speak. They'll, tell you a little bit about themselves, and oh, it's really serendipitous that I would bump into someone like you here. They definitely were written in such a way that, oh, it's very nice to meet you. I don't know how quite to say that. It feels like kind of a placeholder for, they would never say the characters' names. I feel like they could have done so much better if they just went one step further and wrote custom introductions between the person in charge and the lead of the party and the person meeting. I don't think it would be too onerous for them to be able to actually do that. I wish that they had, but it feels like it's just like an introduction. It is one step in the right direction, but it just, I don't know. It still feels kind of like, oh yeah, I'll jump into you for no real reason. But I will say, when I finally did find Hikari, the warrior who's kind of a samurai prince dude, I didn't really see too much of his story, but I needed to talk about it. His introduction was a little bit different, because when you find him, he's already like defending somebody, and it's just up to you to be like, oh my god, let's jump in and I'll help you. And then they introduce each other from there, and then you can see his backstory. The merchant guy, I can't remember his name, I didn't write it down. He seemed less interesting to me at the time, but I will say that his sort of meeting felt a little more generic, and I don't know if this is indicative of how they'll behave throughout the rest of the game. I do know that, there were events in the original Octopath where you could hit the select button at certain times at like a tavern, and I think that there still is some of that going on where you can talk to them and see what was going on with their history. I want to see more and I want to play more before I really nail down how much of an improvement it was over the original Octopath, at least as far as those characters are interacting is concerned. Octopath Traveler, if you enjoyed the original, and I really did, it's back. And it's just as good, if not maybe a little bit visually better than it was before. I'm very excited to see where this goes when it officially comes out on February 24th, just a couple weeks away. So prepare thyselves, because this is going to be a lot of fun. Unless you didn't like the first one, in which case you're not missing much. Anyways, I'm SuperDerek, this has been Experience Points, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Have a great day, everyone.